time, Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like another time, we have another guest. Today, we're going to be talking about eating. I know you're going to be hungry. Forgive me, but this is going to be something that I think you're going to really appreciate. Our guest today is Abila. She is a woman who's flipping the story script on what it means to have it all together. I mean, on the outside, she's thriving, successful, driven, and health conscious. But behind the scenes, Amber, once upon a time, she was caught in a silent battle with food, a struggle that no amount of willpower, therapy, or weight loss coaching could fix. Her breakthrough, though, it didn't come from another diet or stricter plan. Time right there. It came when she stopped blaming herself. And she's going to really give you all the blueprint of what she discovered in that process. So without further ado, I want to say to you, Amber, thank you for being on the show. How you doing?
Hi, Shemaya. Thanks so much for having me on today.
I appreciate you being on. I said in the intro, with your experience overcoming the struggle in silence, questioning your willpower, and at times probably feeling broken by habits that you felt like it just kind of got life on its own. Mm-hmm. Kind of share us the background story of what you had to go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my journey started back in 2015 when I had this desire to lose weight, get healthier. And so I searched on Google what was the best thing to do, and I came across calorie counting. And so I started religiously counting my calories in MyFitnessPal. And over time, it started to become more and more of an obsession where I wanted to lose more weight. I was becoming more strict with the calories, more obsessive around it, until I was losing weight. But because I was restricting so heavily, I remember my first binge so clearly. It was a time around Christmas when we had cookies in the house, and I thought to myself, oh, I've been going so good. Let me just have one cookie. And then I had one, and I was filled with this strong desire to have another. And so I had another and another and another. And I didn't stop until I had 7 cookies. And then at that point, I was filled with so much shame, so much guilt. And I promised myself that that would not happen again, and I would start over and I would do better tomorrow. And again, maybe a couple days went by, I felt good, but then slowly but surely, I started binge eating more and more. And to define what binge eating is, if you're new to this concept, I know for me, I sure didn't know what it was at first. It's this feeling and sense of loss of control around food, and it's eating an amount of food that would be considered larger than most people would eat, which in and of itself is pretty subjective. It usually happens within a 2-hour time span. For me, it was always like very quick and fast, and I felt like I was out of body, like a ghost in my body. And after dealing with it for a couple of months, I knew I wasn't getting better, and the binges were starting to happen every single day, where I was gaining weight rapidly. Then I had passed my original weight and was now even heavier, and I really just started panicking, and I didn't know what else to do. So the first place I went to was therapy, which is where most people go to when they're struggling with food if they're looking for more of this mental health approach. And in therapy, I learned a lot about emotions, but I didn't feel like it really ever helped me with the binge eating and getting the skills that I needed to have around it. And so that really forced me to start to look elsewhere of, what really is binge eating, and also how did this form and how can I get out of it? And I came across this blog post that described binge eating as just a habit. And the more I started reading it, the more everything started to fall into place and to make sense, where a lot of times in the eating disorder world and just in the eating world in general, you're kind of looked at as just there's a willpower issue of you just need to try harder or do better. Or that there's something really wrong with you and it's going to take many, many years of therapy, and you probably have some big trauma that you're going to have to figure out, and you're always going to have your ducks in a row in life in order to make sure you stay binge free. And neither of those approaches really resonated with me. And so when I learned that, binge eating has just become a habit, it all started to make sense. So basically what they described is that when we're restricting, what happens in our brain is it doesn't know the difference between a juice cleanse and a famine happening in the world. So our brain perceives all of these diets and low calorie things as, this must mean food is going away on planet Earth, and we better make sure we send out really strong urges so you can get as much of it as possible. So that made sense to me. But then the thing is, I had stopped restricting. But because I had restricted for so long and I had binged for a while at that point, even though I was no longer restricting and I was eating enough during the day, I was still binge eating because my brain had learned that this was probably an important habit that I needed to have. And so it kept this habit going for so many years because it wanted to make sure I stayed safe and alive. And to my brain, safety and aliveness meant eating a lot of food.
It's interesting you say that because I almost feel like we all have heard it before. I said it. I heard other people in my family say it. I heard friends say it. Oh my God, I can't stop eating, man. I'm like eating like a horse right now. Mm-hmm. And I say that jokingly because a lot of times we don't recognize these bad habits until it becomes an issue. Mm-hmm. So for you, when were you able to recognize, oh, wow, these habits are kind of getting out of control?
Yeah. For me, it's when it was starting to impact other areas in my life. So I was not wanting to date anymore because I was so insecure about my body, or I had so many self-worth issues that I was so anxious anytime I would start dating. It was impacting my friendships. I wouldn't want to go out with them because I had binged and I was feeling really bad in my body and I didn't want to do anything with anyone. It was impacting my school and my work life because I was no longer focused on it. I was so focused on what did I eat last night? What was I going to eat next? Researching all these tips and tricks on how to stop overeating, how to lose weight. So it really just started consuming my whole life. And I just knew that, you know, eating is something we have to do every single day, multiple times a day for the rest of our life. So I knew it was so important for me to solve it because if I didn't have this healthy relationship with food on the surface, then everything else would be so much harder to build upon.
Once again, listen to Refocused Radio and talking to our guest today, Amber Abila. When you think about high-achieving women who are aggressively pushing themselves in whatever career that they're in and experience success, what do you believe causes them to start struggling with silently, if you will, with food? Because in order for there to be an actual real shift from where you used to be to where you want to be, something has to kind of spill over, if you will, where it's like, all right, I had enough of this process. It's time to change.
Mm-hmm. So for a lot of high achieving women, there is a lot of perfectionism and this wanting to be viewed and perceived a certain way. So the perfectionism shows up on always wanting to have the perfect eating habits. And then a lot of the views is we want to be viewed as someone who's healthy, as someone who has it all together, as someone who doesn't have any issues and is almost like this perfect person. But when we have that, that creates a lot of shame when we're doing something differently. So I would go out to eat with people and I would order the salad with the dressing on the side. And then I'd come home and I would eat, you know, half my cabinet of sweets because I didn't want anyone to see me doing that. And so it became always the secret struggle too. With a lot of shame around it because I didn't want anyone to think differently about me around it. But then it really created these additional thoughts around food where I was like, you know, if I have sweets, I want to eat them all now because I don't know when I'm going to get them again. Now I'm going to have to look good for the next couple of days. So then that made it even worse because then I thought I had this scarcity mindset around food of it's going to go away soon. I'll start again tomorrow. So I wanted to get it all in right now versus when we learn to change that and we become okay being in this middle ground and being this imperfect human, then I have no problem eating a cookie in front of someone. And I don't feel the need to eat 10 of them right now because I know I could have one again tonight or I could have one again tomorrow. And it's not a big deal for me anymore because I've let go of this identity as like this perfect, healthy person. And that's allowed me to really be able to find this moderation with foods. And I know when you're first struggling with binge eating too, you don't really know how to do moderation. And that's the hard part is you don't even want to start eating those foods in front of other people because you think, well, what if I binge on them? And I don't ever want to see someone have me see them binge around foods. So it is a process to get to that point, but a big step towards it is starting to let go of this idea that you have to be a perfect human in order to be worthy, in order to be loved, and really just allowing yourself to be messy and imperfect and just exist in the world because that's what will really bring you the happiness and the success and the freedom that you're looking for.
Two words I want to zoom in on. You mentioned moderation and you mentioned messy. I think that is two things, absolutes that no one can escape from when they're trying to get better in anything, not just food, but just anything. From your own personal experience, when you notice the inner work start to really pay off, where you were in better control with less worry of what you eat in public and trying to please people or trying to make them look like you had it all together. How did that inner work start to pay off for you to where you start saying, okay, it might be messy now, but I'm gonna actually get through this and see results?
Mm-hmm. Another big part of my journey was really learning how our thoughts were related to our actions and our feelings. And I learned that, anytime I have a thought, this is creating a feeling in my body and that's leading to my actions. So how this tied in with the habit loop stuff is I would sometimes have a thought of, I need food right now. I need to binge. I cannot sit with this feeling of the habit. And then that would create like this hopelessness for myself. And then I would go and binge and I'd go back into the habit loop, which would reinforce that brain pathway. And it would make it more likely that I would do it again tomorrow. So one thing I started to look at is, how are my thoughts not true? And really looking at how I could really dispel them. And one thought that you mentioned earlier that I think was really important was this thought of, I can't stop eating. And it sounds so innocent and it feels so true of like you're eating something, you're like, I can't stop. But we want to think about like how that thought creates a certain feeling. That thought's probably going to feel also like hopeless. Also like there's just like nothing I can do about it. You're going to feel out of control. And your actions from that are going to be, you're going to continue to keep eating. So one like very concrete different thought for that I love is reminding yourself that you always do stop eating. No one has come to me and said, Amber, I've continued to eat every single day from the last 25 years and I've never stopped. Like, no, we always do stop at some point. It's usually, might be beyond where you want to be stopping past fullness, but you do stop at some point. So it's important to remind yourself, I do always stop. It's just deciding to stop a little bit sooner, a few bites sooner, one cookie sooner. So you have that ability in you that you say, I can stop. It's like, okay, well, what would I need to shift in order to stop just a little bit earlier then? Because that will give you that hope when you think instead of, yeah, I can stop eating. And actually, I always choose when I stop eating. There isn't some magical force that comes over me where I stop eating all of a sudden. I decide to stop. And when you think I can always decide when to stop, that brings you your power back and makes it more likely that you actually will stop eating when you want to.
Once again, listening, I'll be focused ready, watching this online, talking to Amber Abila. Speaking of stopping, I think that is something that we get better as we are more committed to the process of, this is still something I want to get better at, because it's easier said than done. When you think about tools that you provide for your community, we'll talk about your podcast. And right now, if you don't mind, what are some of the ways you give to your community some of the rewiring options and trying to slow down and stop those old patterns that they've been used to? Because sometimes this stuff happens because of stress. People are going through some pain and that triggers some emotions, and what's better than watching Netflix and eating some food?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite tools I've ever created is actually something that I'm giving away for free, which is my guided audio to stop a binge in its tracks. So these urges that come up, most of us have no idea, like really what are urges? How do I handle them? How do I sit with them? And urges at the core of it, they are this feeling, this emotion of over desire. It is too much desire for something because we have a normal level of desire for food, which is hunger. That is something we want to act on, that desire for food. But then there's this over desire, which is when we desire food beyond hunger and we're full and we don't need it anymore. And that's what we want to learn how to sit with and not act on, so we can tell our brain this isn't a habit we need. So what I do for you in this guided audio to stop a binge is I take you through, first I give you a couple reminders about like what urges are, how they're meaningless, they're harmless, they're powerless, you can sit with them. But I also take people through a visualization. And visualization is a really powerful tool because it essentially gives our brain a blueprint of how we want to be, and it allows us to see things ahead of time. So what I have people do is I have them visualize, well, let's say you do eat all this food right now. Your brain is telling you, I want to eat that whole row of Oreos. I want to eat that chocolate bar. I want to pull out the Ben and Jerry's. And then you just think about that first part. Oh my gosh, it's going to taste so good. It's going to taste so delicious. We need to tell ourselves the rest of the story, because if it was just good and delicious and we moved on, we were fine, then there'd be no problem with it. But that's not the whole story. The whole story is we eat it and then we're flooded with the guilt and the shame. And then we check in with our body and we're getting that horrible sugar rush and we're feeling really thirsty and we're feeling really bloated and tired. And then we can't sleep that night. That's what we need to show our brain of, the results of it. So I walk you through that part of like, okay, let's see what happens after. But then we think about the alternative too. It's like, let's imagine we sit through this moment of discomfort where you're getting this urge, it feels hard, but then you get out of it. And you are feeling so proud of yourself and you are so excited, you are so elated, you feel amazing in your body, you go back to work, you have energy. And then the next day it's easier for you because you have just now told your brain that this is not a habit I no longer want. And in that moment, it literally rewires that brain pathway and deconditions it so it is not as strong. Now, of course, the more we do it, the less strong, the more we sit with urges, the less strong that brain pathway will be until it eventually like prunes itself away. But yeah, so every time we sit with these urges and we get through it and we show our brain the truth of what happens, it makes it so much easier for us to see the clear answer of what we want to do, because usually we're not telling ourselves that full story. We only tell ourselves we're gonna eat the food, it tastes good, or we're gonna sit with this urge to be hard and uncomfortable and boring. And we need to tell ourselves the rest.
Yeah, I can't say that better than what you just said. That's why you're the one shining on this episode, because a lot of times we can put too much energy in overthinking how to do something versus, okay, let's just worry about what could happen if I actually follow through with this. Mm-hmm. That's when the signal of having better control gets stronger, because if we just go based on how we feel that time of the day, we may not have our feelings lead us to the best activity, and that can really have a domino effect. So I like what you said there. When you think about someone who's watching this right now, listening to us, and they feel like they're still feeling shamed about what they might be doing with binge eating, you mentioned your audio tapes that they can listen to. Is there additional tools that you offer or introduce your community to that helps them along that journey of taking that shameness and taking it away?
Mm-hmm. Let's start with what shame is and, what it feels like. Shame is when we say there is something inherently wrong with me as a person. And there's a big difference between feeling shame and feeling guilt, where guilt is more, I've done something bad. It's not something wrong with me like shame is. And so it's really important to look at shame as something that, is really self-created. It is not inherently wrong that you are eating food. And that's what, when we simplify it down, we take away all the drama that we have about it. All that's happening at the end of the day is you're eating food. Yes, it might be more food than your body needs, but there is nothing wrong with eating food. No one out here is killing puppies, murdering kids. We're eating food, and that's okay. Yes, we might want to change it, but really just taking that shame away from it, because I call it the shame bubble, which is when we're in this shame bubble, we can't really see our way out of it. We feel trapped and we can't do anything about it. We just feel hopeless. We feel a lot of despair and we just get stuck. So we first kind of need to pop out of that shame bubble and say, you know what? I've done some things. I don't really love that I'm doing them, but that's okay. I'm still a good person deep down. I'm just eating some food. Let me figure this out now. So once you get out of that shame bubble, then I think it's really helpful to find others who have maybe been in your position and come out of it, like me, or if you have another coach or person that you love. But I have a free community on Facebook as well. It's called Become a Confident Eater support group. So that, I think, is really important, to find something where you can find community in and remind yourself that you're not broken, that you're not alone in this. Because something I see all the time that will happen is people will hear someone else talking about this, whether it's me or another person in my community, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's me too. I didn't realize this was such a normal thing, or that someone else dealt with this, and like all of the weird things. I mean, I have done so many weird things with food. Like, I can't even imagine, some of the other things people have done too that they feel so much shame about, but they're really just like, it's actually a normal response to restriction and deprivation around food. There was a study, it's the largest study done that basically shows why diets don't work, called the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. And they basically, to sum it up very quickly, they took a whole bunch of very healthy men and essentially starved them to try to see what were the effects of starvation during World War II. And the men started exhibiting these really weird behaviors where they would sneak food and they'd hide food. They'd steal food from stores. They would like mix food with water to try to make it last longer. They would take it from their friends. They would intensely study cookbooks. They became obsessed with cookbooks, even though if they had no prior interest in cooking. So they did all these like weird things around food, but they're actually not that weird if you think about how our brain is wired for survival. So also remembering that too, like, all of the weird things you're doing, when you look at a biological sense, they probably make a lot of sense when we look underneath the surface of them.
Yeah, it's funny you said survival. That's exactly what I saw in my mind when you was sharing those studies, because I think, like I said earlier, you can't overcomplicate some things. And based on what you're saying, is no big secret, long magical formula equation, if you will, that you're trying to put out for the audience. Is basic skill sets and basic knowledge that only someone who actually been through it can give. And I think that's what's so awesome about this show, is that when people like you have been through certain things, other people might give a lot of fluff and be like, a lot of noise. But you just cut right to the chase and you're like, yep, check that box, I done that. That's what's amazing about the show. I mean, me, myself, man, in college, there were times I'll eat a whole bag of chips and get another chips. I'm not talking about the small bag that you get in the vending machine. I'm talking about like the big one that you get in some grocery store. And so I think this is something that I hope a lot of people appreciate, because I think it hits everybody. It just hits everybody differently. That said, someone watching, listening, they want to keep up to date to what you're doing in the world. What's the best way that they can find you online and keep in touch?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the best way is going to my website, theconfidenteater.org. That's where you'll find my guided audio to help you stop a binge. There's also links to my Instagram account, my Facebook support group there as well, and my podcast. I release new episodes every week on my podcast, Become a Confident Eater. So those are really fun, like bite-sized kind of like coaching lessons almost on, little individual topics to help you stop binge eating. So all of those are a great place to check me out next.
Once again, been listening to Refocused Radio and watching this online, talking to Amber Abila. Like always, I want to say to you, thank you for your time.